Feeling so hard. Summer living spring with a thrive. Go, 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 oh, shout it aloud. In the summer sun, we're a summer loving crowd. Talking Brazil ball, we're breaking it down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talking Brazil Ball. We're once again here to dissect and evaluate the goings on in Brazilian football over the week. George, how are you doing? Have you enjoyed the Brazilian football and indeed the rest of the football this week? The transfer window's hotting up, isn't it, in England anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say to everybody, Bem-vindo dos todos, which means welcome everybody to Talking Brazil Ball. Yeah, that like you said, enjoyed it, James. Obviously, my team won. That makes it better. Well, one of them did anyway. And like you said, the transfer window is hotting up, and it's all to play for, isn't it? Come Friday, four of the Brazilian teams as well. I think does conclude on Friday as well, but I'm not certain on that. But yeah, how are you, James? Como vai? How are you?
Right, yeah, Portuguese is really coming on, isn't it? You know, every week we seem to get a new phrase, and then we still get half of the name still butchered, don't we? I'm looking forward to when you can say Mano Menezes instead of all this kind of flitting about and this and fancy pants with his new languages. But yeah,
well, there you go. Yeah, Bem-vindos a todos.
Flipping it. You were just doing the whole show 1 week, weren't you, Portuguese?
Well, yeah, you never know. And I'll have a translator sat next to me so he can translate it all in English for you.
Yeah, give a call that chap who used to be with Bielsa.
Of course. He's in Australia now, isn't he? So, yeah, he's West Coast Mariners, I think. So, give him a call, get him on board, yeah.
Well, maybe in a few weeks. But yeah, I'm all right. It's been a busy time for me covering the transfers and stuff. So, like you said, we'll see if there's any late movements. Liverpool do look busy, but the Brazilian teams are busy. I don't know if there's maybe one or two notable ones which we might go into a bit later on. But as we said, obviously, let's get down to business. What we're here to do is every week talk about the Brazilian football and what's been going on. Once again, George, there's only been one round of fixtures since we last met, and then an extra game. I think there was one. Did Inter play midweek? I can't remember.
No, that was last week.
Last week, wasn't it? And I think again this week possibly.
They play on tomorrow night, James.
Yeah, but not since we last spoke. So there has only been one round of fixtures, which is nice. Gives us a nice easy one to round up. So do you want to let the listeners know, as always, keep everybody up to date with what's been going on in the Brasileirão this week in terms of results?
It would be my pleasure, James, of course. So Saturday the 24th of August, GO, massive win for them, James. Late win, 2-1 over Juventude. Palmeiras 5, Cuiabá 0. Into Sunday, 25th of August, Galo 0, Fluminense 2. Bahia 0, Botafogo 0. Criciúma 0, Grêmio 1. Fortaleza keep going, James, at the top. 1-0 winners over Corinthians. Sao Paulo 2, Vitória 1. Inter 1, Cruzeiro 0. Flamengo 2, RB Bragantino 1. And Vasco 2, Atlético Paranaense 1. Concluded the match week this morning, early hours of this morning, UK time, James.
Yep, some interesting results to go into. Like you said, Fortaleza keep on plugging away. Another massive win for them, as we may mention later on. But let's kick off, as always, with the games of the week. So you've done well this week, haven't you, George? I mean, anybody who's been listening the last few weeks will know that you've kind of cursed your match of the week, haven't you, by just picking a 0-0 every time. It wasn't 0-0 this time, was it? It was 1-0. You had the Criciúma Grêmio game, didn't you? So at least one goal to get stuck into. A big win for Grêmio, really. A needed one for them, as all of them are these days, with them having such a poor first kind of half to the season, and on the back of two defeats as well. I think they were, weren't they? So, what did you notice from this game? And how did it go? Obviously, Grêmio 1-0 winners in the end.
Yeah, like you said, James, I often seem to get really low scoring ones. If it's not 0-0, it is 1-0. So, and it happened again this week. Obviously, like I said, Gremio won. Massive win for Gremio, James. It takes them 5 points ahead of the relegation zone, leapfrogging Kachuma as well in the process. And it was quite an even match, this one, really, James, to be fair. A lot of shots on goal from both sides, 19 for Kachuma, 14 for Gremio, but there weren't much on target, only 4 apiece. Gremio maybe were the more potent, and in the end, obviously, it showed with the goal, which, Monsalve again, I think that's his second goal, James, of the season. Yeah, his second goal. He's got an assist as well. He's doing really, really well. And yeah, it was quite even. One of the teams, it was always going to be a tight match, and in the end, Gremio come out on top. It was, really late scoring. I texted him as these games were going on, saying, "Gosh, there's been no goals at all in the three sort of." I think it was Saturday night game or Sunday evening games. I think they were, and there were no goals for long periods of these. I think 3 games, and yeah, in the end, it's a cross ball from Aravena, who hasn't played much at all for Gremio. Is a recent signing from Chilean side Universidad Católica. So yeah, he's only just signed, only his 4th appearance. He got an assist, James. It was a lovely cross ball in from the left-hand side. Monsalve didn't give up the ghost on this one. Second bite of the cherry, he put it in the bottom corner and he won the game for them, fantastic stuff. And I think Krishuma I think they'll be disappointed really, but they're just in different form, James. They're in a very indifferent form. 2 wins followed by 3 without a win. 2 of them have been losses. So they're just teetering on the edge of the relegation zone, 3 points above it. I don't know. How do you see Krishuma going, James? Because I really can't tell here.
I think they're kind of par for the course. I think they're doing about as well as they probably, they're doing all right. It feels to me like they've been doing a bit better than the kind of the position, really. They seem to pick up the odd results here and there, but they're just, 3 points above the relegation zone now. So I know they've got a couple of games in hand on a few teams, but to be fair, this is, probably what they'd expect. I think it's at the point where they're probably a bit disappointed by this. Obviously, Gremio are down there with them. I think Gremio were actually below them at the time the game kicked off. So, they might have been slightly disappointed at home. But yeah, I mean, it's a very, very narrow defeat, isn't it? And just going back to Gremio, really, I think obviously Monsalve is a player that we have covered in the recent weeks, having arrived from Colombia, isn't it? He came from, and then Aravena as well. So he's another young player, Aravena, isn't he? Alexander Aravena is only 21. So they're two young players linking up, but also 2 new signings linking up. And when you think about with Braithwaite as well, who started this one, didn't get on the score sheet, do you just think those new signings have given them a bit of a boost? Because they did need a mid-season boost. And sometimes it happens that way. You just get a couple of new signings in, and all of a sudden you look like a different team.
Yeah, definitely, James. I mean, they've only had 1 rogue defeat in quite a number of games in the league, which was to Bahia last time out. So, yeah, definitely, I do. I feel like they've really turned a corner. I think they were right to stick with Renato Gaucho. I think they were right to stick with him, and it's proven like a good decision. Braithwaite has no doubt given them. I know he burst on the scene, didn't he, and scored those 2 goals. And, he hasn't got any since, I don't think. But, he's obviously given them quality up front without scoring at this moment. The youngsters, like you said, are scoring. Also, like you said, also new signings. Yeah, it's given them a bit of a breath of fresh air. I think they, can now look up towards the maybe even the Sudamericana positions and try and squeeze into there. Come the end of the season, they are only 1 point off that, to be fair, at this moment in time. So, yeah, plenty to be positive about for Gremio. And I don't think there's too much for Kachuma to be too downhearted about. I think they'll just squeeze it, just do okay, just do enough to stay in the division myself.
Yeah, they're certainly staying competitive. They might rely a little on Balassi, but like we've mentioned before,
Definitely.
he tends to either get 0 or 2, and he got 0 in this one, and maybe he'll get a couple next time out. But anything else you'd like to mention on this one? I know you wanted to put the spotlight on Kachuma a little bit, having not really covered them. Is there anything that stands out to you about them, or any plays you'd like to look at, or should we move on?
Yeah, I think we should move on, James. I mean, I do want to look at maybe Kachuma in a little bit detail. Maybe I will get the opportunity to do it as the season comes to a close. But this particular game, there's nothing outstanding about either side, really. Again, it's a really disappointing, in my sense, for one to cover. There isn't a great deal going on here. And, yeah, you know, hopefully next time we can have a goal fest. I think it's coming.
Well, it better be, you know, because I've had a very low scoring one as well. And to be fair, you know, you've taken the spotlight with these, but I've had a few which have been a similar way. I mean, I don't know. We haven't compared. We can't really compare in terms of looking in depth, you know, from our own experience. But it does feel like a lot of the game weeks are quite low scoring, to be honest. I mean, you get the odd thumping, but there isn't even that many thumpings. That a lot of games tend to be won by the odd goal, really, a 1-0 or a 2-1. And this one, obviously, Inter against Cruzeiro wasn't. And again, you text me, George, as you tend to do during these games, and a big result for Inter. Or maybe it was after, but it certainly was a big result for Inter. I mean, they've been struggling under Roger Mercado, as we remember last week. They got I don't think we really touched on them last week, but they did get beaten by Atletico Gio after picking up their first win of the season against Juventude, and that was a really disappointing setback. This was a tough game, really, against Cruzeiro, who were in 7th place, going relatively well, although, as I'll touch on, they have hit a bit of poor form. But I think it was a type of game that was always going to be one goal in it, really. And Inter, to be fair to them, look a bit like they've dominated, 19 shots. Cruzeiro have only had 5, I think. So it was kind of a bit of a backs to the wall job, it looks like, in some kind of respects. And yeah, the winner was from Rafael Borre, who I think has been disappointing really this season. He's only got 3 goals so far, and he's a player who's of decent pedigree. He's been in Europe for a long time with Frankfurt and with Bremen, and he's been in Spain for a bit as well. And I think he's just been injured a bit, and he hasn't really been able to get going. He was signed in March as kind of the man to lead the line for Inter, and he's just never really been able to get that kind of run in the team. Here he came in for Enner Valencia, who I think had a little bit of a knock, but he did come on later on, actually, Enner Valencia. But yeah, Borre started and got the goal. And it was an interesting goal, George. I mean, you must have seen it. It was well taken. It was kind of a pullback from him, and it was notable, I saw in the press afterwards, because there was actually some videos prior to the game circulating of Inter playing out the exact move that led to the goal 3 or 4 times on the bounce. They would give it to the winger. I don't know if it was Tabata or Tablata, was it? Is that what it's called? Tabata?
Let me just see. I think
it was Tabata. I don't know if it was Tabata who they were pinging it out to, but there was in the video. They were giving it to him. He was pulling it back, and Borre was finishing it. And they did it 3 or 4 times just in a row. And then the exact sequence led to a goal during the game. So they'd obviously straight from the training ground. And it worked, you know. It wasn't anything special, but it was a well timed. It looked slightly behind Borre, but he managed to dig it out, and he kind of stuck it in. So in the end, that was enough. It was only 20 minutes left when that went in, and obviously, as you can imagine, Mercado was happy with the result after the game. He said there was visible improvements from the last week, which obviously was a really disappointing defeat at Gio. And yeah, they're up to 11th. I mean, I've always kind of maintained with Inter that I think they're kind of in a false position based on those games in hand. I mean, they've only played 20, George. That's at least 2 less than everybody else. And they're kind of comfortable mid-table. Okay, they probably should be higher. But, you know, if they win those games in hand, played 3 less than Cruzeiro, and they're 9 points behind Cruzeiro. So, in theory, you win all of those and they're level on points. So I think they've been a bit unlucky in the sense that everybody's left them behind in terms of games played. And I think they have reason to be optimistic. I don't know what you think on the back of this result, basically, because I know you've been a bit disparaging about them, and I just feel as though they've had a bit of a tough break. And like Gremio, I don't think it's perhaps a coincidence that we've seen both of those Rio Grande do Sul teams picking up, as the season's gone on, given what happened at the start of the season.
Yeah, definitely not, James. And maybe I'm doing them a little bit of a disservice into, and you've got to say it was a massive win. And yeah, if they win those 2 games in hand, they're up to 34 points, they're up to mid-table. And then, like you said, they've got even 2 more games to play in hand on some teams. So, like you said, there's much to be, optimistic about. It was a massive win, basically. They play the same game again tomorrow evening, don't they? In Cruzeiro, in Belo Horizonte. So, that'll be interesting to see, days apart, how the game goes again. But yeah, I think, Mercado had a difficult start. It was a massive win against Juventus last Wednesday, and now a big win against Cruzeiro, who have hit a bit of a snag, haven't they? Have hit a little bit of bad form, but nevertheless, really, really good. Really good result. They do need 1 or 2 of their, like you said, their better players, like Sabore, maybe Enner Valencia, I know, has been hit with injury, went to the Copa America as well. They need to step up and give them something else. But, Wesley as well, who's a big player for them, he's top scorer, I think, at the moment. So they need more from the bigger players. But at the moment, I think, yeah, they've definitely got room for optimism and think, the right to think they could probably go on to maybe get the, you never know. They might even get qualification for the Copa. You don't know.
Well, they've also got a good young player coming through. We've spoken about Gabriel Carvalho in the past. He started again this one, only 17 now, played an hour of that, so he's reason to look up. But yeah, Cruzeiro from their point of view, things have hit a bit of a disappointing patch. They've not won for a full month now, so 27th of July was their last win. And yeah, they obviously were going very well early in the season. Fernando Seabra, he was kind of blaming it a little bit on various things, one of them being that Mateus Pereira, who has been very influential for them this season, was suspended. So he will be back. Like you say, they are playing tomorrow evening in Belo Horizonte, and they'll hopefully, I mean, it's rare that you see that 2 teams play each other so close together in a league game. But yeah, he's coming back for that one, Pereira, and he has been in good form. So I think worth pointing out that they are through in the Copa Sudamericana, so they made it through against Boca Juniors. So no kind of a difficult game, really. I know Boca aren't what we kind of know them as usually this season, but they're still a force. It's still difficult to get past them over 2 legs. They did that on penalties, so they are through to the semi-finals. They're still up in 7th. I don't think there's any reason for them to panic or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, it seems to be the case with a few teams this season where we've seen them go on decent runs, do relatively well for a time, and then just kind of fall back into the pack a little bit and perhaps have a little bit of a renaissance after that. So I think they'll be all right, Cruzeiro. It'll be important for them to get a win if they can tomorrow. If not, pressure maybe starts to ramp up a little bit on Seabra.
Well, yeah, possibly, James. Like you said, no win for a month now in the league. It should be added. But if they win, 40 points, they're into 6th above Bahia. So yeah, all is not lost. Each team obviously generally goes for a bad patch of form. It seems to be Cruzeiro's at the moment. But I think, yeah, like you said, I think they'll be fine overall, really.
Yeah, they will be. I'm sure they will be. And they were 14th last year, I think. So, that should be pointed out that they are doing better than they were anyway. They're not in any threat of relegation at all. And like you said, if they can reach that 40 points, which they definitely will, then, they're not going anywhere for next year. So, yeah, big one for everybody, really. Big one tomorrow to come. And we'll see if they can bounce back and get a result for that. For Inter and Mercado, 2 wins out of 3. And they're starting to look better. So good for me, obviously, up the Colorados. I don't know what you say, George. In Italy, they say Forza, don't they? What do we say in Portuguese? It's probably quite similar, actually. It's maybe Forza.
What would you like to say?
Well, I want to say on you Reds.
It is.
Here he is with a Google Translate.
No, not at all. It's Vamos la Vajalos.
Okay, of course, vamos.
Yeah, it's
Vamos
just
a la
Vamos, isn't it?
Colorados.
Vamos
Fantastic.
la Falamos.
Falamos.
Famelos.
Right.
Vamos
Well,
la Famelos.
they're the Colorados, aren't they? So
Oh, right, okay. Vamos
really
la Colorados.
It's probably lost Colorado. Who knows? Anyway, they had another good nickname. What was it? The Rolo Compresor, the steamroller. I like that one. So
Yes.
that was into the famous intersides. Anyway, let's move on then with the games.
Vamos la Gallinas. Gallinas.
So we'll let's rock on to
that means come on, you roosters. So that's my team, of course.
I can't remember what the derogatory word was.
I think it was finger, wasn't it?
Finger, was it Frenger or something like that?
Frenger. I think it was Frenger.
Yeah, something along those lines. Anyway, let's crack on with the awards. Those were the games of the week, or otherwise, really, as it turned out in the end. But the awards, George, we've had a couple of outstanding performances. But in terms of the player of the round, it was slim pickings. I mean, it was a low-scoring round, as I said, aside from the Palmeiras game. And unsurprisingly to anybody who followed this week's action, we've given the award to young Mr. Estevão Willian for I don't know how many time. He's a young player. He's obviously 17. He did win the player of the round in the previous game week, and he's done it again, George. And we couldn't argue with this one, could we? As much as we don't want to really give it to him in a way, but he's done it again, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think James, we're a bit divided really in terms of should we give it to him? We couldn't not give it to him. Particularly, he's got 2 goals and 2 assists. He's been the reason this week why Cuiabá have been on the end of such a battering. Could I just point out, James, I somehow did predict this right in our prediction league on Instagram. I predicted 5-0 Palmeiras. It doesn't often come true, those sort of scores, but it did this time. Yeah, Estevão celebrated his call.
Just what made you go for that, George? Why did you think?
I don't know. I just thought, you know what, they're going to batter me. I don't know what it is. Cuiabá are in a really, really, really bad run of form. No wins in any competition, James, since the 13th of July. So they're over a month without a win. And I just thought, you know what, Palmeiras, maybe after coming off the back of that Sao Paulo win, that derby win, I just thought, you know what, obviously they've got a bit of fire in the belly, something to prove after going out the Libertadores as well in the week. I just thought, yeah, they're going to smash them, and they duly did. A lot of the goals in this game were pretty scrappy, I thought. To be fair, I think Mauricio has got his first goal for his new club, coming from your club, of course, James, Inter, not too long ago. But you can't look past Estevão here. Like I said, celebrated his call up to the Brazilian national squad in the week with a marvellous return for goals and assists. It was a fabulous display from him, really.
Yeah, not a surprise to see him called up. I mean, we should give him, his due. It's unfair to say we don't want to give him these awards, but we do like to kind of focus on maybe players who we haven't heard of and that kind of thing. But when a player is doing what Estevão is doing, he is special. It's a real privilege to see him doing these kind of things. He's now got 7 goals and 7 assists for Palmeiras in this season, and that is actually 2 goals away, or 2 goal contributions away from Neymar's same return at the same age. So Neymar was 17 for Santos, and he got 10 goals and 6 assists in the season. That was 16. So he's 2 away from that. He's obviously bettered it in terms of assists already. We're only just halfway through the season. He's going to better that unless he picks up an injury. So it really is impressive what he's doing. And like you said, George, the goals were a bit scrappy in this way, but the first one was a corner. Even that little detail to me shows what a special talent he is. How often do you see 17-year-olds take the responsibility of being the set piece taker for the team? It doesn't really happen. So even that is a nod to the status that he now has at that club. And yeah, took the penalty as well. He's getting the penalties. Then, like you said, that I thought that the second goal he got was a little bit scrappy, but again showed him at his best cutting in from that right onto his left foot. And then the second assist I thought was really good as well. He did well on the right wing, and it wasn't the best ball into Felipe Anderson, but he showed real strength and balance to hold off the defender. As a 17-year-old kid again, and just to poke the ball through to his teammates. So what he's doing, even if you look at those little details, obviously we know he's got the move to Chelsea. We know we'll see him in England, but it is impressive to see what he's doing.
No, it definitely is, James. He's really impressing everybody. Like you said, he's got the Chelsea move coming up to look forward to, and he's playing without any fear, any pressure, really, because he's a 17-year-old kid. I think unfairly people will put a lot of pressure on him, and Palmeiras, having seen what he's done so far this season, will naturally put pressure on him, but he's obviously not feeling it. He's going out there playing with freedom, playing with enjoyment, and it's good to see, really, like you said. We do like to give it out and let people know about different players in the league and stuff, but you can't ignore the talent of that quality when he does such things as he did the other night. You have to give him one of these awards that we have done. He has got the Player of the Round award before, I think, and he's got a couple of Young Player of the Round awards because he's obviously in the category for that as well. But we couldn't ignore him. He had to be the Player of the Round this time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, we've seen it with Hendrick. I think Hendrick struggled with that spotlight a little bit at the start of this season because it is obviously an enormous club. Coming through as a Brazilian talent, I think, is different from anything else, really, because there is such a spotlight internationally. Not everybody will know Estevão at the moment, but on the back of that move for Chelsea, on the back of his breaking through, there's always such a hype over Brazilian youngsters. So they quickly become the figurehead for their clubs. And Palmeiras aren't having. They've been on a bit of a difficult run, haven't they? They've been having a bit of a tough time. So, that would swallow up a lot of young players, talented or not. So to see him coming through that and really standing up and being the main man with Hendrick going, they haven't missed Hendrick at all in some ways, really. They have struggled a little, but Hendrick was never, he never felt like that Estevão is at the moment to me. Estevão feels like the man. And I feel like with Hendrick, there was other players who were perhaps doing a little bit more, but Estevão now feels like the one who's going to do something. So, yeah, like you said, he still categorises for the young player very much so, really, still for 4 years if he wanted to. But, he's nobody could better him this week, and I don't think anybody really came close, to be fair. So well done to Estevão Willian. And as you said, George, celebrating that call up to the national team for the September fixtures. Palmeiras more generally, obviously a huge win for them. I don't know if you saw, George, the controversy post-game with Abel Ferreira, who, as we've seen in previous weeks, he's been a bit tetchy, hasn't he, going into things.
He's a bit outspoken, isn't he, James? He likes to just say it as it is, really, and think of the consequences afterwards, possibly.
It seems to be a little bit, but he has had some kind of consequence this time. So I'll read you the quote, this one, because it has garnered international attention from what I could see as well. Obviously he was pleased after the game, but I think there was a lot of frustration of previous weeks and things like that. And he was asked about an injury during the game, which was to Mike, I think. Mike.
Oh, yeah. The right back.
Yeah, he picked up an injury during the game. So he was asked a question by a female reporter after the game during the press conference, whose name is Aline Fanelli. So he was asked, she's a radio reporter, I think, and she asked him about the injury. And for some reason, he took a real exception to it. And listen to this, George. He said, "One thing you have to understand is that I have to give satisfaction to only 3 women. My mother, my wife, and Leila, who is the president of Palmeiras. They're the only ones who can ask me for an explanation. Others can speak up, complain, praise. The coach has to know how to listen and how to accept." So, a strange response and obviously a very, very weird response from Abel Ferreira, especially to a very, a nothing question, it seems, from Fanelli. So, he's obviously realised his mistake. They have put out a statement, actually. I think Palmeiras and Ferreira himself has actually put out a statement in which he doesn't apologise. Actually, I noticed, but he did mention that he called the reporter Finelli on the bus back home after the game. He realised that he might have been a bit out of line, so he called her and apologised to her, I think, directly for any embarrassment. But I don't think she was having it. She put a post up on Instagram, which was saying, "I've never had as unpleasant an experience like this in my 17-year career, but I feel strengthened as a professional and mainly as a woman." So, difficult, as we know, for women in football, George, generally, very male-dominated sphere. But, it's never nice to see anything like that, really. And Ferreira, it feels like it's been coming, something like that. And obviously, for some reason, he's just been tipped over the edge. And I think it speaks to the mindset of him at the moment that he's gone and done that.
Yeah, it's boiling up and boiling up and boiling up, and he doesn't probably care. I mean, he's obviously happy with the result, but he probably doesn't care who's on the end of his sort of fireball of a response. He's not on that really the way that he responds to it. You've got to be professional. To be fair, James, he strikes me as a bit unprofessional, to be honest with you. And you've just got to hone it back. You've just got to take a minute to think about it. If you're frustrated or whatever, just take a minute and process it, and then just calm down and respond to the question normally. He just seems a little bit erratic, and he just seems to say what he thinks straight off without even thinking what in his head what is his response going to be, because that's offensive. It's obviously offensive to her because like I said, it questions her kind of thing to do it as a reporter, which she can do it as anybody else can. She's just asking him a normal question, and she's had this horrible response from him. Which, it'd be interesting, James, to see if it was a bloke asking him that question, what his kind of response would be to that as well.
Yeah, well, you can't imagine. I mean, maybe he'd have responded irritably as well, but it was obviously pointed at her. And I mean, maybe it was meant as some kind of an off-color joke. I'm not sure, but obviously it was like you said, highly, highly unprofessional, unnecessary, and has caused offence. So, once a coach comes into this kind of territory, I never think they're very long for it. I mean, he's had a great success at Palmeiras. Perhaps he's just not quite used to the way things have gone this season. I don't know. But back on the pitch, they are up to third. They're not a million miles away still. They're 4 points off Fortaleza. Fortaleza have a game in hand. They're right there with Botafogo. They're still right in the mix, aren't they?
Oh, they're in the mix, James, definitely. But outbursts like that from the manager won't do them any good, won't do the dressing room any good. They'll know exactly what's happened. They'll hear about it. They'll probably have to hear all week about it now. And it's just not conducive to any sort of positive environment. I know they're third, but they should probably be top of the table. I think he's probably going to get the sack at the end of the season. They're out of the Copa now, so I think I don't think they're in the Brazilian Cup either. No, they're not. So they've just got the Brazilian out to concentrate on. I think he's gone at the end of the season, and it's probably for the best. If he's keeping outbursts like that at people for no reason, then there's obviously he's under some kind of pressure that nobody can really tell. But there's no need to treat people like that. She was just asking a question, and it wasn't fair what he's done. And his team won as well. You know what I mean? You'd hate to see if they lost that match, how he would have reacted to a question, because he won 5-0. There was no danger of losing this game at all. And I think Petit on the other side with Cuiabá, he's nearly done. I think if they lose, the next one, he might be gone.
I'm quite amazed Petit's still in a job, to be fair. I mean, they have been on an absolute dreadful run, and they look like they're down, but they're not quite out of it yet. But I'm a bit surprised that they haven't made a change. But you could be right about Ferreira as well. We must remember Fernando Diniz is still loitering around, with his reputation still, probably intact, given even after that dreadful start to this season. So perhaps that's one to keep an eye on. But let's move on, because we've covered Palmeiras in some detail there for the time being. Let's move on to the young player of the round, George. There were a couple of candidates, some of whom we've already mentioned in the previous segment. So your man Miguel Monsalve was obviously a match winner, good little goal, and set up by his Chilean mate Aravena. So they were both in the running. A couple more to mention. Cao Elias, who has been kind of out of the news recently, has his kind of goal scoring has hit a bit of a snag, hasn't it, George? But he got an assist for what was a really good goal actually for Flu, and a really big goal actually for Flu. Get them on the way to a 2-0 win over Gallo. Obviously, just a quick comment on that one from you. I know, obviously, as a Gallo supporter, things are still not going well, really, are they? It's been a while since they've won a game now, and on the flip side, Flu obviously finally out of the relegation zone as well.
Yeah, look, they're in the Libertadores last sort of the quarterfinals. They got through in there, James. But other than the cup win over the second division side CRB, they haven't really been winning. No win in the league since a 2-1 win end of July. So they haven't won for a month now in the league. It's really, really poor. I expected them to maybe at least get a draw from this game. And I'm voting for I'm voting for him to go personally. I think Milito has had his time, and it's all hinging on the Libertadores, what they can do in there. As soon as they go out of that, I think he's gone, James. To be quite honest, they are still in the cup, so they might hang hope on that. But yeah, it's just not looking good in the league. But they may, if he can win them a cup. If he can somehow win the Copa Libertadores, then maybe he might get a chance of a second season. But personally, I would like to see him gone. It's a horrible result for Gallo, really. It's a fantastic win for Fluminense, like you said, out the relegation zone for the first time for some time. And yeah, I think that might be the turning point now. They just needed to get out of there. And then I think they can now build and move on to bigger things, really, James. If they can string a couple of 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 wins together, then they're cooking towards the middle end of the table and potentially Sudamericana qualification, which would be, probably all they can hope for at this point in the season.
Well, it's they are. I mean, it's semi-finals now, isn't it? The Copa Libertadores, I think.
Oh, is it?
Or is it the quarters still? Might be the quarters.
I think it's the quarter-final, James, but...
Yes, it is, you're right, yeah. It
is the quarter-final. Yeah, they play Fluminense, of course, so
they
it's,
do, yeah. So
it's
that was
another opportunity to, yeah.
That wasn't a particularly good dress rehearsal for them, would have given Flu a lot of confidence, but I think that they're not having a too dissimilar season to what Flu had last year. I mean, Flu finished 7th in the end, and we're always, I think, loitering around that kind of position, a bit lower. They never threatened to go for the title, but obviously they did win the Copa Libertadores. So if they can win it, he'll definitely save himself a job. But as you say, it's not within sight. It's still a long, long way, really, to be able to win it. And they don't really look like getting themselves anything. But anyway, hopefully they can pick up and push on, because it is a really disappointing season for them. They've gone under the radar, perhaps, given that obviously Flu and Gremio and Corinthians and Inter even have had poor seasons, but they have as well. But yeah, during that game, Cao Elias, it was just a little ball off to Cerna, who it was nice little like a shimmy, did like a Fernando Torres thing, beat his man and looked like he was going to bend it on his right, chopped inside, finished it, dinked it really nicely over the keeper. So that was a good goal. Another young player who got a goal actually was Douglas Mendes from Red Bull Bragantino, centre back. This was quite a nice finish actually. Took it quite well, I thought, off a corner. It kind of came out to him, didn't it? And he slotted it. So he's a 20-year-old centre back, George. One we haven't really mentioned in the past, I don't think, but. As ever with the Red Bull teams, maybe a young player to keep a watch over.
Yeah, definitely, James. I mean, like you said, I think he's come through at. He's on loan, I think.
Yeah, he is.
From Salzburg, isn't he? So he's very much in the Red Bull system. Is Douglas Mendes? It was a lovely finish. Defending had to be desired, I think, in this one. I think they seemed to maybe try and play him offside, but it didn't quite work, and. He slotted it home without, unchallenged, really. But yeah, definitely they've got a few young players, maybe Bragantino, that might be worth having a shout at looking at for some European sides possibly. They're really, really in different form as well. They don't, they just have for ages. They just haven't been able to get any sort of run of form going. Proper run of form going. They've got to be careful. They're slipping and sliding towards the relegation zone, and they need wins really, James, because at this point, 5 points ahead of the relegation zone, but they're very much on the downward spiral, and it's difficult.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're right. We have mentioned Douglas Mendes in the past. I forgot he is on loan from Salzburg, so he'll be back there under Pep Linders next year probably, and from there, who knows? It's a well trodden pathway, isn't it? So he is a name probably to keep an eye on. But none of those. Although it was nice to see a number of young players getting on the score sheet and things. I mentioned my mate Carvalho at Inter as well. Obviously, he's doing well as a young player in midfield. But it was another young player young winger actually. He's not a midfielder. He's a winger who has scooped 2 awards this week, George. So we may as well do them together. He's won the young player and the goal of the round, and that is young Mr. William Gomez of Sao Paulo, 18-year-old winger. What can you tell us about him?
Well, to be honest with you, James, not a great deal, actually. I couldn't really find that much information on him, actually. It was only his 9th game for Sao Paulo, his first goal, his first start. He is a Brazilian under-16 international as well. Like you said, only 18. Don't turn 19 till March next year. So, yeah, look, it was his first start. He scored 6 minutes into it. And what a goal this was, James. It was absolutely nowhere, nothing came close to it this week to scooping the goal of the round. It was a wonderful goal, just 6 minutes into his full debut for his hometown team. It doesn't get much better than that. To say they went on to win the game as well, even better. So he'll be absolutely buzzing with it. I mean, tell the listeners about the goal, James, if you would.
Yeah, it was a super goal. Like you said, there was nothing come close to it, really. There was another nice goal in this game, Eric, Sao Paulo with this left-footed curler into the top corner. Gabriel got quite a decent finish for Paranense. And as I mentioned, I enjoyed that Serna goal for Flu, but nothing touched this one from Gomez. Yeah, it was a shocking piece of defending, first and foremost, from the Victoria defender. I don't know who it was, but he just gifted it straight to Gomez, basically.
Yeah, it did.
Use pass. Out of the defence, he was under no pressure, really. He just kind of clears it straight to Gomez, who is probably, when he picks it up, probably about 35 yards out. He strides forward a little bit, and then he just unleashes it left-footed, kind of to the goalie's right. I think in off the post, possibly. It was a little bit tricky to tell if it did go in off the post.
I think it did come off the post. Yeah, the goalkeeper was nowhere near it, was he?
The goalkeeper didn't move. No movement for the goalie. So it was one of them, just, thunderbolt, cuts across it a bit, top corner, probably in the end 25 plus yards out. It's a beautiful goal, and you could see in the celebration he wheels away. Everybody chases him as well. It meant a lot to him, as you say, with his hometown club. And he is a prospect who is, by all accounts, very, very highly rated, George. He's on the back of that goal. He has actually signed a new contract with Sao Paulo. So I don't know whether it was probably in the works before. He's been in the team for the last few months, I think. But new contract with €120 million release clause. So obviously they know that they're not getting that for him if anybody did come in, but it just protects them in case anybody wants to try and sneak him on the cheap, basically.
That's incredible, isn't it? I mean, like you said, scoring one goal and bang, new contract, probably improved, terms for him, improved salary for him. Just off that one goal, bang, 120 million release clause. You talk about these young Brazilians coming through, James. This is what we're talking about. They know that big, giant European sides will be sniffing around him. They will have watched that goal. They will be looking at him saying, hey, keep an eye on this boy now because look what he did at the weekend. We want to have him. So they do right by doing that. That was, quite swiftly done. And probably the correct thing to do, really, in the end.
Yeah, they just, like you said, once a talent like that emerges, and I did see this one on Twitter as well, so it kind of reached a kind of a wider footballing consciousness. So once that gets out there, teams will try their luck. So if the clubs know they've got a player like that coming through, a young player, they know that it can be a kind of a meal ticket for them in some ways. So yeah, fair play to them. He may or may not come to anything particularly big, but he's had a good start to his career there.
Well, there's so many of them, James, coming through. Like we know, sometimes it gets swallowed up by it all. Will he go on like Estevao and attract big interest from massive European sides? It's to be seen. He was on Instagram. He was on social media after the game, James. And he put a few pictures of him celebrating and shots of the goal going in with a caption. I think it was it must be quite a religious boy. When the time is right, the Lord, will make it happen. He says, "Thank you for everything, my Lord," and feeling that will never end. So obviously quite a religious boy, like I said. And yeah, he owes it all to the Lord by his words.
Don't we all, George? But he's. I mean, well, fair play to him. But Zubeldia, I know after the game was very, very pleased, very proud of him as well. He seems like, I think he's a left-footed left winger, so Zubeldia was happy with the way that he'd come in and done that. So maybe he should be thanking Zubeldia instead. But we'll see if he does in the future. But
well, he also had his word on the new contract as well, 2028, of course, James.
Yeah.
He says, "Sao Paulo Football Club is my home, and this is another chapter of my journey with this club that I love so much. Thanks to the management," so he's thanked him there, to be fair, "the technical committee, my teammates, let's cheer together." So, yeah, a little bit of a nod to Zubeldia as well, who, like you said, did give him the opportunity. You've got to say fair play to these coaches, because they give these young boys chance after chance after chance. And it's something that we just don't see, I don't think, as much in England, especially. Like 16, 17-year-olds regularly getting opportunities. You don't really see it. So fair play to the people in charge, giving these young lads a real platform and a good go to start their careers off with.
Yeah, certainly not at the top level anyway. Like you said, the amount of them, the volume of them coming through it's crazy. There seems to be a new one almost every week who comes onto our radar anyway. Yeah. So yeah, well done to William Gomez. A big week for him, obviously. And he scooped up 2 awards, 2 Touring Brazil Ball awards to go with it. It's not often that happens. So,
well, it happened a couple of weeks ago, didn't it, with Braithwaite? That was the first time I think it's happened. So only the second time, James, it's happened, and he can be very proud of himself there. He's had a good few days and a lovely goal that to boot. They won the game, like I said, as well. Also, it has to be mentioned that Elirandro, the winner of our goal of the round last week, he was on the pitch as well. I'm sure he would have been disappointed, but probably would have applauded that goal as well, given what he can do, as we know what he did last week. So he did score in this game as well.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's very important to Vitória. Has been a top player for them in terms of goal contributions, hasn't he? But yeah, they couldn't win this one. Vitória are 3 without a win now. They have dropped into the relegation zone, which is, shouldn't be alarming for them necessarily, but they are down in there now after Flu clambered out. But let's focus on Sao Paulo for a second, George, because I don't feel as though we have much in recent times. Maybe they're in 5th. They're right in there. They're a little way off the kind of the top. Obviously, well, they're not too far, are they? They're 6 points off, the 3 points off Palmeiras. So, in fairness to them, they are kind of in there. And it should be mentioned, George, that they're also in the Copa do Brasil. They're still in the Copa Libertadores, even actually. So they're still going strong on three fronts. They could have a real special season here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like so in the quarterfinals, it's an all Brazilian tie with Botafogo in the Copa. They've got Galo on Thursday in the quarterfinals of the Brazilian Cup. So yeah, it could be a really special season for them. Like James, I tipped them for a bit of a wild card, bit of a surprise this season. So it's looking fairly on, although it's not the surprise of the season, as we know. But yeah, they're looking decent, as you know, and I think you do as well, like Zubaldia. So I do as well. So yeah, it's good to see them doing well. They've got a good side there, and I tip them for the Libertadores qualification again. I do.
Yeah, very good team there, very good young player. One to keep an eye on there, William Gomez, and we certainly will do. As you mentioned, George, just touch on quickly. What?
Go on.
What are you laughing at?
No, yeah, it doesn't matter. I said something and it just sounded like I wasn't talking about Gomez, but there you go.
Well, you said they've got a good team there, yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
I said they've got a good team there and a good young player in Gomez.
Oh, well, yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to tie it together, isn't it, sometimes?
No, it's good. No, it's good. I thought, we'd already spoken about him, but yeah, fair enough.
Well, yeah, we did. I mean, I'm sure we'll speak about him again as well. So
I'm sure, James. Yeah, really good player, like you said, a good one.
Yeah, one to keep an eye on. But like you said, they are not the surprise of the season. The surprise of the season, we'll just mention briefly, is Fortaleza again. What a story, George. They won again, 1-0 again. They seem to like a 1-0. They've won 5 in a row now. They're 9 unbeaten. They're breaking all sorts of records in terms of, I know we had some comments on the pod about they don't get the publicity up in the north. They've broken all kinds of records in terms of a northern team or a northeastern team anyway. So, I mean, what a story. They're still going strong, aren't they?
It's unbelievable, James. They've unbeaten in 12 in all competitions. They've won 10 of those games. And it's absolutely amazing. 4 of them, to be fair, have been by 1-0. So they don't score that many, but they just keep going. They just keep going, James. And obviously, I've titled this episode about Fortaleza. I don't think I could not do. You just can't ignore what they're doing at the moment. 1-0 win over Corinthians. It was Pikachu who got them the win. You know my thoughts on him, James. I think, but it's perhaps, like you said a while ago, time to get over his name. But Fortaleza fans won't get over this season. They're just having a fabulous time of it, and they're very much. I know Voivoda won't want to talk about the title, but he's got to start thinking about it now. Really, surely 15 games off the end of the season, and they're right in the mix, top of the league. It's a massive game next weekend, James, as you know who it is they're playing. But yeah, if they can win that, they've got some real daylight. I can't believe it, to be honest.
Well, a lot is riding on that game. It's Botafogo against Fortaleza this weekend. I'm sure one of us will cover that, George, actually, because it is a top-of-the-table clash, quite unbelievably, really, at this stage of the season. But that's where we are. And like you said, if they can win that, they will go 4 points clear with a game in hand. So it is a big game for them. They beat Corinthians this time. They're also playing Corinthians in the Copa Sudamericana quarterfinal, so they're still in that. Amazing what they're doing. And I think Voivoda, he is going to have to start talking about the title. If they can go 3 or 4 more games on that route, there's no escaping it. But yeah, brilliant what they're doing. Fantastic.
Well, if you look at their games remaining, James, it's not. It's doable. I know they've got Flamengo and Palmeiras, but other than that, you've got to say, I'm obviously in Botafogo this weekend, but it's doable. I think it's doable. I do.
Yeah, I think it'll all come into play, pressure and other big teams managing those situations. They're obviously very inexperienced at those, but yeah, it is. It's certainly doable from this point, and it's amazing. It really is fantastic. So shout out to all of Fortaleza fans. I know we did gain a few listeners, so shout out to all of you listening. And what a season you're having. Keep enjoying it, because they don't come around too often, unfortunately, those kind of things. So you've got to make the most out of them, and I'm sure that you are back over there in Fortaleza. But anyway, George, that's a sneak preview into next week's fixtures. Let's round up the rest of them. If you've got the fixture list there, let's go through what we're looking forward to in the coming match day. I think there's a couple of good looking games in there.
There is, James, but just before we do that, I'd just like to touch on Corinthians slightly, and they're not doing so well, James. I think it's a sort of 6-game winless run now in the league, and yeah, they're looking like losing Yuri Alberto to Southampton potentially. It's not looking really good in the relegation zone. 2 points adrift now of 16th place for Fluminense. It's looking a bit bleak for Ramon Diaz, isn't it? There at Corinthians.
Yeah, they're struggling. I mean, they're still in both cup competitions as well, actually. So perhaps they need to just get out of them a little and focus on the league, because they did seem to correct themselves initially under Diaz, and they have regressed quite alarmingly, really. And they are back down there. Flu are pulling away ever so slightly, and they do need to be very careful. You're right to point them out. And as you say, Yuri Alberto, I think we highlighted him at the start of the season as a key man for them, and he hasn't really ignited this season, but as you said, he's on the way. He's flirted with a move to England in the past, and it looks like he may well get it this summer. So that'll be a big loss for them as well.
But they're looking at Cabral, James, potentially Arthur Cabral, bringing him on a season-long loan, which I think's a little bit out of the question, possibly. But you never know, do you? You never know how these deals can swing. So
yeah, well, he's Brazilian, played in the league in the past, hasn't he? He doesn't look like he's particularly doing all that much at Benfica, maybe. So we'll see. Perhaps it will happen. But anyway, let's get those fixtures on the board. Who have Corinthians got next? Any sign of a win for them, George?
Corinthians have Juventude in the cup, James, and then Flamengo on Sunday. So we'll run through the fixtures as always. So we have here on tomorrow evening, Criciúma face RB Bragantino at 10:30 English time. Cruzeiro also face off against Inter at the same time. Into the next match day then, Saturday the 31st of August, Cuiabá against Criciúma at 10:30. Sunday the 1st of September, Botafogo, big one, face Fortaleza at 1 a.m. English time. Cruzeiro against GO at 3 p.m. Grêmio Galo at 3 p.m. as well. Corinthians, like I said, face off against Flamengo at 8 p.m. 10:30 p.m. then, Atletico Paranaense face Palmeiras, Fluminense face Sao Paulo, Juventude against Inter, RB Bragantino against Bahia, and then Vitória against Vasco to wrap the weekend up, James.
Fantastic. Some really good-looking games there, I would say. Plenty to choose from, George. There is one dangling there that we have to cover. I don't know.
Who wants to choose that? Who wants to do that one, James?
Well, you go first, don't you? So if you want that, you take that. If not, take your pick.
You know what? I will pick that one, but there are a couple that I will just mention that I was looking at. There's three actually that look pretty appetising. There's four. There's Grêmio Galo, which is a decent looking match. There's Corinthians against Flamengo. There's Fluminense against Sao Paulo, and there's Juve against Inter, which all four of those games I could have picked, James, but I've got to go. You can't ignore the one at the top, Botafogo against Fortaleza.
No, it's the biggest game of the season so far, really, I would say, for the position of the two teams and what it could mean, especially for Fortaleza. I mean, Botafogo, we didn't mention them at all this kind of episode, did we really, George? They got a draw 0-0 at Bahia, so that's probably why, really, a bit of a stumble for them. Last two games have been draws. So, yeah, they need to... I mean, the pressure's on Botafogo, I would say. All the pressure's on them. Fortaleza are not really still, they're in dreamland. So the pressure's on Arthur George and his team. So we'll see if they can rise to that. But like you said, there were other good looking games, and I am going to pick one of those that you mentioned. I'm going to go with Flu against Sao Paulo. As I mentioned, when we touched on Sao Paulo, I don't feel as though we're giving them a lot of attention recently, and they are going quite nicely. Flu as well, going quite well. So I feel like that'll be a good game, good marker to see where Flu are at. and also to see, I think, whether Sao Paulo can push on and make themselves a serious title challenger too. But yeah, some other good games in there as well. And like you said, Juventude against Inter is a derby, or a kind of a regional derby at least. And Inter, obviously, we know have got that game against Cruzeiro in between, so perhaps they'll be looking for 3 wins on the bounce by that stage. So we'll all to cover next week. George, lots to look forward to. Before we do though, obviously, shall we round up with the table and take a look at where everybody is?
Yeah, absolutely, James. And like I say, usually it would be my pleasure.
But not this time.
Oh no, I will say it, but I will say it in Portuguese. Serie A prazer. So, top of the table, of course, is Fortaleza.
Say that again. The music was interrupting you. I think the listeners didn't get a good sense of that.
Okay. So it would be my pleasure, James. Like I always say, Serie A prazer.
Wow. Let's do it.
So top of the table, as we mentioned, Fortaleza on 48. Second is Botafogo on 47. Palmeiras in third on 44. Also on 44 in fourth is Flamengo. Fifth is Sao Paulo in on 41 points. Sixth, Bahia on 39. Seventh is Cruzeiro on 37. In eighth position, Vasco on 31 points. Ninth is Galo on 30. 10th, Atlético Paranaense on 29. 11th, Inter on 28. 12th is Juve on 28 as well. 13th, Grêmio on 27. RB Bragantino in 14th, James on 27 points. 15th is Criciúma on 25. 16th is Fluminense out the relegation zone, James, 24 points they have. Relegation zone then, 17th is Vitória with 22. 18th is Corinthians, also on 22. 19th is Cuiabá on 18. And 20th position, Atletico Go on 18 points, James.
Yeah, it's not too much.
They're making a heck of a go of it, though, it has to be said.
I was just going to say there's not too much in it. I mean, nobody's been completely cut adrift so far, so still all to play for. As we mentioned, probably last week, I think it was still probably 8 teams, maybe half the table almost is kind of under threat of going down, I would say. So it's always interesting to see. I was just going to mention just before we go, George, I was just going to look at Serie B quickly because we haven't really mentioned Serie B too many times, and obviously that's running alongside Serie A. And yeah, it's just interesting to look at who's up the top there. So 4 teams come up. Currently, they are Novorizontino. I can never say this one. Novorizontino. They're at the top. Santos, of course. Many people would predict them to come back up in second. Mirassol a third, and Villanova a fourth. So other teams we might recognise are kind of not really doing that well. Goiás, kind of mid-table, Sport Recife as well, Curitiba, bigger sides, Paysandu we have recognised from the past. So, yeah, those are just teams just to keep an eye on, George, just for the future reference, because we might need to learn about them for next season.
Yeah, absolutely, James. You know, when we will, you know, and when they come up, we'll have a look at them and, you know, see how they get on. And I would say for next season, we will have a look at the promoted sides who come up in more detail before the season starts. I think that's something that we probably should do. But like you said, other than Santos really there's not many that, you know, we might recognise. There's a few further down the table, like you said, that people will recognise potentially. But I think Mirassol, you know, would be quite an amazing achievement for them to get up to Serie A. Because in 2022, they were in Serie C. So, you know, it would be quite an achievement for them.
Yeah, it would be for sure. I don't know if they've ever been in Serie A, but it's definitely one to be aware of, that one, Mirassol. It doesn't look like they have, actually, to be fair. So that's maybe one for us for next year. Nice yellow and green kind of badge on there. But anyway, that's all for the future, George. For now, we're going to say goodbye, aren't we? I think, and look ahead for another week of action.
We are, yes. We're going to say goodbye. Yes, that would be. We're going to say adios and see you next week.
Yeah, we are going to say I do see you next week. Have you not got to see you next week down yet?
Hang on a second. I probably can do.
No, you're all right. Adios.
Adios.
We're breaking it down, bringing the passion from every town. Let the world be filled with love tonight. Sway to the beat, make you feel so right. Summer vibes, we're dancing in the